So, what are the do's and don'ts of belonging to a critique group? Welcome back to Coffee with the Authors, where we discuss the craft and business of writing.
Why even be in a critique group? Well, there's camaraderie. There are not a lot of people who really understand what it's like to be a writer unless they are a writer. It can be a very lonely thing. And so it's just really nice to be around other writers. Another thing is you might want to join a critique group to improve your writing through constructive feedback. And then there's that it's kind of like having a deadline. If you belong to a critique group, you have a meeting coming up, you haven't really put any time into writing. Well, all of a sudden you're putting time into writing because you have to share something when you come to the meeting. So it's kind of like a self-imposed deadline.
Okay, what are some of the possible downsides of being in a critique group? They probably all come under the heading of being in the wrong group.
Yeah.
As a general concept, it's usually a pretty good idea, but sometimes you can be in with the wrong group of people. How can you tell if you're with the wrong group of people? Well, really, it should be more about encouragement than criticism. In other words, you should get some good critical commentary about your work, but you shouldn't feel bad about yourself or your writing abilities. So kind of a good touchstone for am I in the right group or not is how do you feel when you leave? I mean, do you feel like I'm encouraged? I want to go home and write. I feel like I'm a good writer. I'm working on something that's worthwhile. And from today's sessions, I got some good ideas on how to improve my work. Versus I'm discouraged. I can't write. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I want to just quit writing. If you have even a vague touch of any of those kind of feelings, you may be in the wrong group. And if you find yourself in a group that is counterproductive to your goals, it's perfectly fine to go look for another group.
So if you belong to a critique group, one of the things that you have to assess about yourself is your behaviors toward the other people in the group. And really, it's about the attitude. You want to check your own ego at the door. You're not just there to have people give you feedback, hopefully positive, encouraging feedback on your writing. You're also there to give it to other people. You know how sometimes you're in a conversation with someone and you can tell that they're just listening for a place where they can slip in what they want to say? When you're in a critique group, you want to be the active listener. You want to be the person who's concentrating on what one of the other members is sharing and giving thought to that, not about how worried you are about sharing your pages or what people are going to think or, about yourself. Think about the other people that are there. And if everybody in a group were to do that, it'd be a very positive environment. So contribute to that.
A good question to ask somebody when they are showing their work to you and you're going to comment constructively upon the work. A good question to ask them is, what is it you're trying to do here? What are you trying to say here? Because it's that old adage about seek first to understand. And before you tell them what you think, you need to know what they're trying to do, because this is the big pitfall of being in a critique group, either as a critter or as a writer, which is that other writers tend to tell you how they would write it. And really the goal is you want to help the other person write their book as best they can, as opposed to telling you how you would write that same story. So in general, you want to stick to the writing aspects of the story. And once you've pointed out something that you think maybe isn't working or you're unclear about something, try to leave it to the writer to figure out how they would fix this issue, unless they ask you for specific ideas.
I also think it's super important to use positive reinforcement. You can catch them doing something right. I really like the way you da-da-da. I really like the way you da-da-da. What I would suggest is that you employ the compliment sandwich. So I learned about this through editorial letters where my editor would write me something just glowing in that first paragraph. And in the last paragraph, she would reinforce how very much she loved this story and all the wonderful things that were going to come from it, et cetera, et cetera. And in between, there was all this stuff I needed to do to fix it. So if you use that approach where you find something to compliment and then you gently suggest things for improvement, and then you end with a compliment, that just works so much better than just saying, oh, I think you should throw it in a third person. It'd be better.
One good sign that someone might be on point with their criticism of your work is when you get that vague feeling that, yeah, I kind of thought there was something wrong with this, or someone tells you something about your work and you're thinking, yeah, I kind of had that same thought, but I was hoping it was just me and no one else would notice, or maybe I could sneak it in and slide with it. But but they're not letting you slide. When you kind of get that feeling, that's a really good sign that they're probably on point.
Yeah. And when you get similar comments from several people, that's also a sign. I used to have this joke where Mark would suggest something and I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. And so I wouldn't employ, his suggestion. And then I would turn in my manuscript and my editor would say the same thing. And it just drove me crazy. It's like, oh, you're siding with Mark again. But when both of them said the same thing, like independent of each other, I knew that it was time for me to roll up my sleeves and get to work. So if you hear the same thing from several people, as much as your knee-jerk reaction is going to be, no, I don't want to do that, or no, I don't see it that way, it's time to kind of take a step back and listen to it.
On the other hand, you don't want to continually be revising your story based on feedback that you're getting. People will say things like what you just said, like maybe try it in third person, or maybe this isn't YA, it's middle grade, or maybe the character should be an adult, and then you're like totally revising your book based on that, based on what one person said. That stuff can drive you crazy. You just kind of, you're blowing with the wind. You do have an artistic vision for your story. You know in general how you want it to go and what you want the resolution to be, and you kind of want to drive towards your artistic vision while still taking their feedback.
Like Mark said, it's your story. Make sure that it remains your story. It should resonate with you. It should say the things that you want to say the way you want to say them. But that doesn't mean that other people can't input things that will help you make it a better story. It's a nuanced balance and one that can take time to achieve.
In the end, it's your name on the cover. So you need to be happy with every word that's between the covers. That's completely up to you, and that's your call.
That's it for this episode. See you next time. Meanwhile, dream big, work hard, don't give up, and
keep writing.
What are we doing?
I'm still talking here.
Well, that's nothing new.
Try to focus it.